Mr. Ned, a couple quick questions. Do you know in reviewing the legislation and your recommendation in terms of the acreage involved with the Grand Canyon ban, how much of that acreage in the legislation is private?
Congressman, it's my understanding somewhere around 19,000 acres is private surface.
And the legislation, and I would suggest that the department and the people that work with you go back through that legislation, that the withdrawal area and where the ban on uranium mining would be is all federal land. There is no public land that belongs to the state or municipality. Nor is there private land. We're very scrupulous about making sure that was the issue, and I would suggest, and based on what you find out, to communicate that to the committee. Uranium mining, how much, what's the amount of royalties do we get from uranium mining?
Congressman, I don't have a number to give you in terms of royalty we've collected from
It's hard rock mining is considered mining, and right now, based on the 1872 law, the answer is 0, isn't it?
Again, under the 1872 mining law, there is no royalties that are paid, Congressman.
On federal land.
On federal land, yes.
State land adjacent to it, they pay. They pay royalties there, but they don't pay on federal land. So there is no net return for the taxpayer from hard rock mining and uranium mining in this case in particular. The other issue is in reviewing specifically uranium mining, how much of the extracted uranium on federal land or how much of it, or on any land that any particular private or other public land, how much of that, or tribal land, how much of that is for domestic use and how much is exported?
Congressman, I do not have a specific figure to give you here. We can get that information if needed.
That would be very important, because the this energy self-sufficiency dominance begs the question about how much we're sending out of the country with no royalties being paid to the American taxpayer. Chaco Canyon, how long is the pause for in terms of the protection that was laid out by the Secretary?
The Secretary said at least for the next year, there would be no leasing.
And implied in that would be, I think, at least I'm interpreting it as a direction to this committee to hurry up and make that permanent so it's codified into law. Would that be an assumption of yours?
I cannot speak to his assumption. I can speak to what I've heard from the Secretary, and he would like to have 1 year while we continue the resource management plan, and he asks us to get a draft out as soon as we can. But
if the Secretary felt that for a year, based on his conversations with tribal leaders and other community people and the Senator, obviously, that it was necessary to impose a 1-year moratorium on activity and extraction around Chaco, one could assume that that was not made without consideration for as one of the options being studied to make that permanent, correct?
Again, Congressman, the Secretary's asked for the 1 year, and he's asked us to incorporate an alternative that represents the views of the tribal leader.
But we heard on that trip that Mr. Lowenthal was mentioning that he led into New Mexico and Chaco Canyon in particular. What we heard from tribal leadership across the board was a permanent protection for that significant site to Native people and to the history of the nation. So I think that's I'm taking that to heart, that's what the Secretary wanted. So I think we should be about the business of giving him what he wants, but that's down the road. Thank you. Yield back.